Micaela Paschini, Team Lead Tax Legal at Tax Consulting SA. Micaela, appreciate the time this evening. Last year's budget, I did 2 trips to Cape Town. Neither of them got a budget, and that was all around VAT and the like. You're suggesting VAT might be a discussion point again, but to be clear, you're not suggesting potentially VAT increases. You're talking more around VAT efficiencies.
That's 100% correct, Simon, and thank you for having me this evening. So in a nutshell, what we're foreseeing, as we know, there can't necessarily be another VAT percentage point increase following, the unfortunate drama that unfolded last year. What we're seeing or expecting is that really SARS and National Treasury will likely look to tightening up certain definitions to broaden the VAT base. And I think the easiest target or the most reasonable target would be to look to taxing digital services by foreign suppliers more effectively, which we've seen has been on SARS's mind for, I think, almost the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But they've not gotten it right to date.
I want to go into more detail on that, but something which you did just touch on, which is, it's still going to be a tough budget for the minister. We've got expenditure demands are growing, make no mistake around that. But the odds of an increase in VAT is practically zero, notwithstanding what will be another tough balancing act from the minister when he delivers his budget on the 25th.
Most definitely, but at the end of the day, VAT is still one of our primary revenue drivers. So it's certainly something that Treasury should be looking into, because we can see the revenue demands at the moment. And VAT is, it's all about consumption tax. It's just about getting that balance fair and ensuring that, we aren't all left worse off following any amendments to that.
Is VAT one of the easier taxes for SARS to implement?
Look, that's a bit of a double-edged sword to an extent. We see on the one hand that, everybody pays VAT, the end consumer pays VAT. It's something you can't get out of. The problem is, and just to turn back a little bit to the digital services that SARS has been trying to attack, is the foreign suppliers of digital services are effectively making money from South Africa, and for that reason should surely be taxed at their 15%. Yeah. The problem comes in, Simon, is that this largely hinges on voluntary compliance. So you're expecting a foreign service provider who doesn't know anything about the VAT law to come forward and tell SARS, can I please register for VAT? I'm supplying these electronic services. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily what happens in practice. SARS should, in a perfect world, be encouraging these businesses to come to South Africa and make it easy for them. But I think we've not just gotten there as yet.
And some of it does work. And I remember when this was first proposed, and if memory serves, with Pravin Gordhan, who was finance minister at the time. And I remember thinking, I don't know how he's going to get this to happen, except when I'm shopping on Amazon and I buy a book for my Kindle, when I'm paying my Disney fee. With those organizations, I am paying my VAT. To the point that you made a moment ago, perhaps it's some of the smaller, and it's not that they're trying to dodge it, it's just that they're a little startup somewhere and they're unaware of our tax laws.
Very true. Look, we're also seeing it at a bit of a larger scale at the moment. But critically, if you think about it, this is also very important for competitive business in South Africa. Because, if you're a South African provider, you need to charge your 15%. So surely it's not equitable to have a foreign supplier supplying the exact same service, but not charging that 15%. Of course, you'd go with a foreign supplier.
Yeah.
It might be because they're just uninformed, but that's definitely something I think SARS should look at to make sure there's no VAT leaking through the digital cracks, for lack of a better word.
What can SARS do? You mentioned that they've put some legislation out over the last decade or so. If my memory serves, there's been a couple of them. What more can SARS do beyond what they've done already in your mind?
Look, it's a very good question. And maybe just to touch on some of the legislative cycles, the first time we saw this come up was in 2014 when we introduced the taxing of foreign suppliers of electronic services. Then the definition was refined to broaden the definition of what they call electronic services. And then in 2025, we saw they try to provide relief for certain business-to-business supplies. So although we can see there's been an effort, what I think remains a bit apparent is that SARS is trying to tax this thing, but they're not entirely sure how.
Yeah, I get your point. We're not alone by this. I mean, I'm thinking if I buy something out of Europe, out of the UK, where they have VAT, I'm often being charged VAT in those markets. This isn't a uniquely South African situation.
You're very right. And I think, the African continent as a whole is really trying to keep up with technology and technological changes to make sure they're capturing all of these services within their VAT nets. But it is a bit difficult when it all hinges on a technical interpretation of what constitutes an electronic service, as we're so rapidly evolving in today's economy.
It's also, I imagine, if we go back, as you say, 12 years ago, 12 years ago, I was buying some Kindles, and that was probably about it. I'm spending a lot more on these digital electronic services these days than I have in previous years. Therefore, that number is markedly growing, and a lot of that money is money that I'm, not spending locally. For example, my Disney might be instead of a multi-choice.
Exactly. And that's where I think it's important. Treasury has this opportunity to collect VAT from those that can afford the services. If you can afford digital services, then adding VAT to that is not necessarily as hard a hit as opposed to trying to increase the VAT rates and affect everyone, especially for the lower income households,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is a good direction that we could go into, because this is where the money is really these days. Most people have a ChatGPT subscription,
Sure.
Netflix and the like. So at the end of the day, that's where the money lies.
Yeah, and as you said, I think for my AI subscriptions, and I flick between different ones, I don't know if I've ever been charged with VAT on them. Maybe the minister can start having a look at the artificial intelligence as we leave it there. It's Micaela Paschini, team lead, tax legal at Tax Consulting SA. Appreciate the time.